The answer to that question is the German military. Ever since 1870, the Germans know that the French are going to attack them. And they come up with a plan, only one plan, not two plans, just one plan. It is called the Schlieffen Plan, invented by a man named Schlieffen, a German commander named Schlieffen, a genius of his age. Once France and Russia allied, this changed everything for the Germans in the fact that you've got France on one side and Russia on the other. So we need a plan of how to win a war with an enemy on either side of you, to the east and to the west. And the solution Schlieffen comes up with is you've got to invade France to the west. France is the mortal enemy. They're much quicker. They're modernized. And so once there's a hint of war, you've got to invade France quickly, aiming straight for Paris, just like 1870, a strike into France directly toward Paris. The French, according to the calculations of Schlieffen, will collapse like they did in 1870, and then the German army can take railroads back to the east and deal with the Russians. The Russians are extremely antiquated. We don't even know what century they're in, 17th century, 18th century maybe. Do they have railroads? Do they even have weapons? We don't really know, but we'll deal with the Russians after we deal with the French. So here's the Schlieffen Plan on paper. Here's Alsace and Lorraine. And the French army will be massed right here to regain Alsace and Lorraine. The Germans, therefore, will be massed up here and sweep into northern France, aiming for Paris. In fact, swooping around Paris. Paris will surrender, and the French armies will surrender, and then the Germans will sweep back to deal with the Russians. The problems with this should be apparent. You're invading France, not through Alsace and Lorraine, because that's where the French are. The French are prepared in Alsace and Lorraine, or near Alsace and Lorraine, to regain Alsace and Lorraine, and we don't have time to get into a slugging match with the French army. And so they're going to invade France through neutral Belgium. North of France is Belgium, and then the Germans are going to come through Belgium. Neutral Belgium. And the other problem of this is the British actually have an alliance with the Belgians. British don't have an alliance with anybody much, but they do with the Belgians, going back to 1830. So the Kaiser is counting on speed, that the Germans will just plow through Belgium really, really quickly before anybody can say anything. The Belgians should just step aside. And then by the time the Germans are to Paris, the British will step aside, in the fact that the British will recognize that they really are just Germans, that this is a war between Germans and the French, and it's going to be a quick war, and the British will just stay out of it. So that's the Schlieffen Plan. And the war begins with the Austrians invading Serbia, and then this triggers the Schlieffen Plan, because as the Russians are mobilizing, as this antiquated backward Russia is actually getting their armies together, the Germans are counting on a speed attack into France and then deal with the Russians. Well, the Russians are already up. So the Germans had tried to tell the Russians to back off, to demobilize, and they wouldn't. And so the Germans declare war on Russia first, and then 2 days later declare war on France, and then invade Belgium. This is why an assassination of an archduke by a Serbian makes Germany invade France. It's blamed on the German military, that the German military had a plan, only one plan, and the Russians are starting to mobilize, and so the Germans have to attack France because that's part of the one plan that they have. And then this is absolutely stunning. This stunned everyone in the world, that the British invaded France through Belgium, and it did not take but hours for the British to declare war on Germany. Unbelievable. And then even more stunning is how quickly they land troops into Belgium. 90,000 troops, that's not a huge army, but it's about all the British have landing their troops into Belgium. They're going to defend the Belgians. And then more problems for the Germans. The problems just don't stop for the Germans. The Belgians actually fought back. Unbelievably, they just don't step aside like Schlieffen had hoped. They actually fight, and fight well. They have fortresses, and they don't just surrender them. They actually have to be beaten out of those fortresses. It takes weeks. This is going to cause a German logistic failure. The Germans had planned everything very precisely in the Schlieffen Plan, and now everything's thrown off by weeks. It should have taken days to go through Belgium. Now it's taking weeks. This uses up food. It uses up ammunition. And so everything on these roads is just all out of whack, and this really sets the Germans for a loop. The Germans don't handle this very well. Not to mention the fact now that the Russians actually invade Germany quickly, not within months, but within days. The Russian armies are into German territory, East Prussia. But let's talk first about the Western Front. The German army almost makes it to Paris. Despite being slowed down in Belgium, they still break into French territory and almost make it to Paris. Their columns become separated. As the army is moving into France, they begin to get separated, And the far right wing, which was supposed to engulf Paris, actually turns short of Paris. They had to change their plans and turn short of Paris. And by the 6th of September, they reached the Marne River, near Paris, but not beyond Paris. So the Schlieffen Plan was supposed to pass around Paris, and it actually turned short of Paris now, reaching the Marne River. This will be called the Western Front. Here you can see the map where the Germans are aiming for Paris right there, but falling a little bit short.